Hi, and welcome to the Connect FCS Ed podcast. So it's a life skills for today's students. I am your host, Barbara Scully, and this podcast is all about recruiting, supporting, and the retainment of family consumer sciences educators. I want to celebrate boldly our families and our careers. So my project goal, moving into this new exciting area of podcast, I had a goal. So I wanted to make professional development from moving from a conference base to an everyday occurrence. Because as teachers, family consumer sciences and CTE, we get kind of lost in the shuffle with all of our general ed requirements and teaching. There isn't a lot of professional development when it comes to family consumer sciences or CTE. So this was my reasoning. From staying up late, working on schoolwork, designing new school curriculum to meet new standards, and attending professional development conferences that would take me away from my family, either physically or mentally, I knew there had to be a better way to both be present with my family without sacrificing my career. Therefore, I developed a podcast. So things that I've learned is that podcasting has become the #1 content platform in the world. So podcast listeners are different than other people who possibly read blogs or watch videos. When you think about it, you can listen to a podcast on the go, while in the car, walking, on an airplane. I listen when I was driving to work. Now my commute is from the upstairs to the downstairs. But I also really enjoy listening to podcasts while doing the dishes, folding laundry, possibly just sitting out on my back patio and just kind of taking a mental break and just listening. So a growing number of individuals are listening and learning from podcasts today. There is a wealth of information on all sorts of things that you could want to listen to. If there is anything that you're interested in, I am almost positive that there is a podcast for you. You got some little ear nuggets right there. But I wanted to enhance our teaching pedagogies and network communities together in the recruitment for family consumer science educators and the retainment for our current professionals. Another benefit to podcasts are that there's no distractions like pop-ups, flashy in-your-face ads, or related videos to click on while you are listening to a podcast. So podcasts are sort of like a conversation between the listener and the host, and perhaps a guest or two as well. It's once I've heard the best way to scale intimacy. So podcasting provides an intellectual and emotional intimacy that visual text lacks. Audio allows for the speaker's emotional nuances. So I'm in your ear. You can now see me through this visual podcast, visual aid on YouTube. A podcast that's released on a regular and predictable basis becomes a habit. And hopefully I will start to become a friend to you. So some of you might be wondering, why a podcast? Why not a blog? Well, a podcast versus a blog is that blogs used to have its advantages over a podcast a couple of years ago when it came down to search engines. So blog posts are made up of text, which would be really easy for internet search engines to be able to pick up, find words, find phrases easily. Just like when you type into your Google search engine for, hey, what is, or give me, or, oh gosh, a recipe. Let's think Swedish meatball recipe. Just by putting in that phrase, all of a sudden, a lot of blog posts are going to populate. But then as of 2019, in March of 2019, Google automatically now transcribes podcast dialogues into their metadata, which also then in August of 2019, Apple, formerly known as iTunes, followed suit with their Apple Podcast users. So if you search on Google for apple pie recipe podcast, Google now includes an individual podcast episodes with an apple pie recipe in its new search results. But if you search the term just apple pie recipes, there won't be any mention of podcasts. So again, this transcription, it's now October of 2020. So this transcription, it's pretty relatively new. So I really love this visual image here for you. So the market research in 2017, you could see a surge in podcast popularity from recent years. So I have given you a little snapshot of blog versus podcast. And like blogging, tweeting, and participating in webinars, podcasting is steadily emerging as a new form of online professional development. Podcasts now reach over 100 million Americans every single month, and it continues to rise. So podcast listening is now up at 37% now from 32%. And that is according to the 2019 Edison research. So in figure 1, you see, is podcasting the new kid on the block? Yes, it is. It is the new kid on the block. But it's not like blogging is not dropping off the radar or anything, because it is. It's still extremely useful, beneficial. It has a purpose. It's not going away. But podcasts are now having their day today. So if you go to Google Trends and compare terms, blogs and podcasts, you'll notice that in 2017, the two crossed over. And that isn't even the current research. I have new research going from blogs, podcasts from the last 5 years with a snapshot. And the scale, the data is absolutely amazing to watch what is happening in today's society when it comes to social media platforms. But for my figure 2, podcasting, it's on the up and up. The trend is clear. There's still growth and opportunity in podcasting right now. Today's current data shows the growing trend in monthly podcast listening. So monthly podcast consumers grew by 16% year over year, cresting over that 100 million American mark. And in 2 years, a year and a half, we're in the last quarter of 2020. By 2022, it's estimated that podcast listeners will grow to 132 million people in the United States. That's huge. That's crazy amounts of growth right now. A new data that I was able to research and what I find most interesting right now. So the number of women listening to podcasts right now, it is reflected. Currently studies that women only hosted podcast is 22%. I'm within that 22%. I'm a woman. My gender is identified as a woman. I'm within that 22% area of women hosted podcast shows. But according to the 2018 infantile, women are inching closer with the gender listening gap, which is lagging behind men by 9%. Women only hosted or co-hosted about a third on the top 100 podcasts on Apple Podcast charts. So it's just crazy what's happening. Women are getting more into the tech industry than ever before. And that needs to be celebrated, because women in tech, it's a hard area. Just like men in the education sector, that's a hard area. Gender is huge. Education is primarily, I shouldn't say primarily. There's a large percentage of women in the educational field versus men. but even more so when it comes down to family consumer sciences educators who are women versus men and vice versa. So from breaking this down, from all of the research articles that I was able to find and locate on podcasting, technology, and professional development that would support my project, there is little written or researched about podcasting in the field of faculty development. Since there's no research, there's no evidence that supports podcasting as a pedagogical my mouth doesn't go that way, pedagogical approach for professional development, thus giving me the confidence and encouragement and validated me to continue my podcast goals. So podcasts are means to support, supplement, and enhance, never replace the traditional in-person lectures or keynote speakers for professional development, conferences, or workshops. Podcasts are capable of empowering teacher-led professional learning to cultivate teacher leadership by assisting educators in feeling less isolated by providing an online social media community which offers to support of individualized, relevant, and professional learning. There is power in teacher-led professional learning that can cultivate teacher leadership. I believe in this so much just because I'm constantly seeking out professional learning to enhance my teaching and create new ideas on how I can create better experiences for my students. And I know you're the exact same way because you're listening to this. So comes down to, while researching for my podcast project, I found a couple of podcasts on home economics and only one podcast solely focusing on family and consumer sciences, but it targets a completely different audience. So, which is the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment. They have a podcast, Talking Facts. It's an amazing podcast, but it's based off of doctoral research, and it goes to WAFCSE, our national organization and everything, and it's amazing. It's got great research, great stuff, but it doesn't really help the average family consumer sciences educator, from secondary, middle school through high school. It doesn't give us those classroom management skills that we're looking for. It doesn't, they don't interview other teachers who are teaching similar content fields, giving other people ideas on what else they can do to improve their teaching and learning. So, and that's okay. It just means that my podcast, there's a place for it. Then there is home economics, what you wish your parents had taught you about money. It's a financial advisor, and it's a great podcast. It's not current. They only had a very short season, and it was good, great information, but it's really just about financial literacy. And then we have this other podcast episode or show. It's called The Modern Domestique. And this woman, I forget her name, but she talks about all sorts of homemade things. And the beginning where everybody learns skills are in the home. And so she talks about that. It's a different aspect of modern home economics. It's about exploring the way of life that enhances our environment and community from where it all begins, the home. So some of you might be wondering, where and how did I come up with my name? So what's in a name? So the start of my podcast journey, I needed to create a name. First, I wanted to create a podcast that would speak to educators and families across the nation and enhance the continuation of professional development. We have information and resources that would assist all family consumer sciences educators and promote awareness of FCS as a profession in the recruitment and retainment of our educational leaders that would connect students with career readiness skills and post-secondary education. I also wanted to align my podcast vision with the American Association of Family Consumer Sciences organization, showing support and unity for the AAFCS logo and community. I wanted a name that inspired connection by unifying the FCS community. I wanted to boldly celebrate families and careers. Thus, the only name that brought unity to my vision was Connect FCS Ed. Somehow, some way, when I uploaded my content into iTunes, Spotify, Connect, FCS, Ed they're three separate words instead of just one word altogether. So it makes things a little interesting when you are looking for my podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, all places. You have to put in Connect space FCS space Ed. But when it came to influencing with design, I was given 6 color palettes to choose from. And this was, I started this whole project back in February of 2020. So this year, still very current, very new, very fresh. I then took these color palettes to my interior design class, and we happened to be going through color theory together. So we started talking about what all of the influences of these colors meant. How did I want to come across with my podcast? Because there's so many different elements of design when it comes to doing a marketing campaign. So I took these color palettes to my interior design kids, and I involved them, and because I wanted them to help me I wanted them to help me throughout this project that would represent my goals. So my students focused on the word bold, because that's within my slogan, my catchphrase, because I was going to be bold when it comes to sharing my knowledge. And I don't think I have a whole lot of knowledge, because this is only my 4th year into teaching. So I don't have a whole lot, but I wanted to be bold with what I do know. And also I'm being bold by my eagerness to learn more. So they focused on the word bold and being able to and learn from the expertise of others. That's what I'm trying to say. But I also wanted to build a brand on trust. Second, we focused on the color symbolism and meaning with each color palette. So we investigated theories on color psychology, what colors communicate, and how the effect of color influences consumer behavior, thus arriving with maroon and blue. So these colors represent who I am. Blue being trustworthy and loyal. Maroon being that I am bold. I feel like maybe I am a strong personality for some. But I'm also gentle, and I'm ambitious, and I'm trying to inspire others, because we are all passionate about what we do, and we have favorite classes that we love. So it's passion. So blue and maroon are my colors. So these are just a few project accomplishments that I have earned over the past, 7 or 8 months doing my podcast, and something I'm very proud of. So as of July, I believe it was July 18th, I earned my first 1,000 downloads. So that's huge accolades when it comes to anybody releasing a podcast. So my podcast launched the first week of May, and I earned 1,000 downloads by that July 18th mark. So 2.5, close to 3 months in, I had earned 1,000 downloads. We're now in October, and I crested over another 1,000 downloads. So I have over 2,000 downloads on my my podcast and analysis. And I crested over at the very beginning of October with 2,000 downloads. And that's another huge, it just is showing that my podcast trajectory is starting to, it's speeding up, it's increasing. So from July 18th to October 1st, that's 2.5 months again. So the more that people share and promote the Connect FCS Ed podcast, the more downloads that I earn, which then means on the analysis tracker, you will be able to find my podcast a lot easier just because it's gaining popularity and it is now populating on the Google search engine or Bing or whatever you choose. Another huge project accomplishment that I have is that through getting my master's degree through GP Ideas, the Great Plains Interactive Alliance distance learning program, my home school where I got my master's degree from was Central Washington University here in Ellensburg. But through GP Ideas, on their Masters of Family Consumer Sciences program, they have a direct link to my podcast, and that is to promote. And what better way to promote my podcast by putting it on another well-known internet platform. That's what it is. And now I just did a workshop on October 5th. I did a workshop for AAFCS on my podcast project, and I have been interviewing all sorts of amazing people. I'm so blessed that I've been able to make contact with the amounts of people within our profession of family consumer sciences, and also a lot of great keynote speakers who aren't in family consumer sciences or CTE or anything. They're amazing keynote speakers, but they are talking to me and they're sharing their good stuff, which we all need to hear. So, and we're just able to hear it in a new light, something that's going to touch us, that's going to help us benefit our classes and our students, and as well as our own teaching styles. So you can find my podcast on multiple platforms. So whatever your favorite search streaming device is, you will be able to find Connect FCS Ed. And my logo is C, the capital C, and then the standout figure. It has earphones, and she should have, or he or it should have a microphone, but I wasn't able to get that creative on her. But I wanted to just bring unity with the AAFCS logo and who I am when it comes to Connect FCS Ed. So a lot of great things to share. Then, so my toolbox has that I use Simplecast, Audacity, Zoom, and Calendly. So my technical skills have increased like tenfold, not just because of COVID, but because of creating this podcast. And this is just the technical and human relation skills. So cooking with Mama Bear, she's Michelle Brown. I've interviewed her, and she's from Illinois, and she has a YouTube channel. I have interviewed Tisha Richmond of Make Learning Magical. She was also our keynote speaker at Washington State Family Consumer Sciences fall conference last year. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but her name is Dr. Monica Burns of Class Tech Tips. And she was a elementary school teacher, which then she was one of the first people to pilot the iPads for her school district. And she has just taken off, and she is a tech specialist as well as a podcast, a blogger, and an author. She is amazing. So I highly recommend, if you are struggling when it comes to technology, listen to Dr. Monica Burns. She will give you all sorts of great class tech tips within a Google sector as well as Teams. Then I've also interviewed Character Strong Houston Craft. They are a local company here in Washington, down in Puyallup, where their home office is. And Houston lives in LA, but he is jet setting all over the place. And he just launched his brand new book, Deep Kindness, which we were able to talk about on my episode interviewing him right before it released. So that was really exciting. And then Jeff Utek of Reimagine Washington. So if you have never heard of Jeff Utek, I highly recommend you search his name. He has, his podcast is called Shifting Our Schools. He is absolutely amazing. He's a very gifted podcaster and speaker, but he's got knowledge, he's got experience, and he has facts and data. He was actually a foreign teacher. He taught in Japan, I believe it was, right at the time when SARS broke out. And immediately in Japan, they all had to shift to online learning. So this was back in 2003, I believe, 2003 or 4. And he just shared with me his passion and his timeline of doing everything virtual. And he has been leading the way for Washington State and for all districts across, pivoting from a hybrid learning to a virtual learning and a face-to-face learning, being able to bring all of it together to make amazing transformational experiences when it comes to teaching and learning. So check him out. So those are just some of the people that I've interviewed. So you're looking at date of beginning of October 1st, and you see how I just crested over the 2,000 downloads. I think by that October 1st, I had 2,126 downloads. And you see, this is on my Simplecast dashboard, and this is how I'm able to see what is happening with my analytics. What episodes are most popular? What episodes are that need to be redone because people were most interested in it? Bringing back certain guests. And then I'm also able to see what top countries are listening to my podcast. So by far and large, it is United States, and then it goes down to Canada and Australia. So a lot of really cool things I'm able to just see and watch and just see how my voice is impacting and making a difference and hopefully benefiting future leaders within our profession. So now I wanted to bring you over to my website. So I have a connectfcsed.com website where you can go and just kind of explore. I have an about page, resources, podcast, and contact. So if you want to listen to the latest episode of the podcast, all you have to do is click on the button, tune in now. And I love it if you can subscribe to the podcast. So just enter your email address here and I will start sending out just kind of a weekly newsletter. The last couple of weeks, honestly, I've been really neglecting my newsletter, responsibilities. But I don't know about you, but I've been pretty busy pivoting all of my content from a hands-on approach to a virtual approach. So I've been a little busy. I want it to become, but I'm going to get back to it. And I'm not promoting any sales or anything like that. I'm just promoting what I am and who I am, and sharing out a recipe, sharing a Tech Tip Tuesday kind of thing. And just what is happening when it comes to social media. And also, I'd love it if you guys would share your recipes and pictures of food that you've made or possibly your students have made while in this virtual environment, and share the recipe. I will highlight it and I will promote it on my website and also in the newsletter, because I think it's really important and valuable that we are sharing our resources, because it's become like the catchphrase that I'm constantly saying at the end of every episode. We are better together. I am passionate about wanting to improve not only my own teaching and learning, but I'm passionate about helping others find their passion when it comes to this. I'm 40 years old. I have been a teacher for only 4 years. 5 years ago, I earned my Bachelor's of Science degree as a 35-year-old woman. My 4 kids were there with me as they watched me walk across the platform at Central Washington University, earning my degree. Then, just in August 18th of 2020, I earned my Master's of Science degree in Family Consumer Sciences Education with Career Technical Education, again by my alma mater, Central Washington University. In 5 years, how far I have come. And I would not trade any moment of the hardship, the pain, the mental anguish, as well as physically just crippling me because I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had a greater purpose. And I have accomplished something I never even thought I would ever. This was even a blip on the radar that I wanted to do. But I've become much more outspoken and more passionate about helping others. And what better way to engage in honest conversations across the nation, across the state, and around the globe than meeting with other people and learning about their experiences and sharing their stories and highlighting their lessons. We all have a lesson to share. We all have something of value that we need to hear. So you are important, and you are the key to making this podcast the success that it is. And I can't thank you enough for listening and being a part of this journey with me. This podcast was my Master's of Sciences degree or project for my cohort project. And I'm really excited to see where it is going to take me and you throughout our family consumer sciences journey. So here I'll take you over to the podcast section. And I love my big head. It's kind of awkward, but because I don't have that big of a head. But yes, so you could listen to it on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, or any of your favorite streaming devices. It's there. And this is my most recent episode 29 awesome Facebook group resources. And I strongly recommend you listening to that. And then this upcoming Wednesday's release is going to be on a fashion and interior design cohort that it's a professional development that 2 women have put together, and they are rocking it, where we have Zoom meetings every 2 weeks talking about fashion and interior design. They bring on amazing professionals from the industry and who talk about what they do for a living that touches in those subject areas. And then we have teachers who share what lessons they have. So my episodes air every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. So leave me a review on iTunes. I would love it, because the more 5-star reviews that I have and more people that share a positive review, the more often my name, and not my name, but Connect FCS Ed podcast is going to populate on the charts. So the more I have of you supporting me, you're supporting our professions. So let's go out there, let's promote, and let's share the good word, because we have something positive to share. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.